This edition of MacVoices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our new Patreon campaign. If you get value from MacVoices, please consider helping support the show by visiting patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have a Take Control author back with us again. This time, he has been here recently. He's back again with a brand new book, Mr. Josh Centers. Josh, welcome. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me back, Chuck.
The last time, I think I branded you a traitor, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, I kind of think so, but we'll talk about that eventually. This time, though, you have a brand new title out that I think every one of us should be really interested in. Take Control of Apple Home Automation. In other words, the S Lady, or Siri. I hope I didn't trigger.
How dare you assume her gender?
Yes, well, that's true. That's true. So the S person. Oh man. Okay, here we go. But that's what I'm assuming it's primarily about. But I have an idea there may be a little more to it. So I'm anxious to hear just about what your experiences are with this book, and specifically what it covers.
Right. So really, the title of the book, the original title was going to be Take Control of HomeKit, but we decided the HomeKit's a terrible name, so we changed it to Apple Home Automation. But really, the book is about HomeKit. And so what HomeKit is, let me back up a bit. Let me first explain what home automation is for those who don't know. So home automation is basically computerizing common appliances around your house. Very common things are lights and thermostats and door locks for a lot of people. So you can do things like, with a computer, turn your lights on and off, change the colors of the lights even, dim your lights, lock your door, adjust your thermostat. So that's what home automation is. So what HomeKit is, it's a technology Apple first rolled out in iOS 8. And it's evolved a lot over the years. Originally, it was just a way to control some of these devices with Siri, but in iOS 10, and this is where I really started getting interested in it, Apple introduced a built-in app called Home, which acts as a central control center, if you'll pardon the pun, for your home automation accessories. And so you have that, and devices. So not every device can work with HomeKit. There is an approval process for various reasons. One of those, the cynical reason, is because Apple wants money. The user-friendly reason Apple wants to approve these devices is because they want to know they're up to a certain level of quality and a certain standard of security. Generally, HomeKit is more secure than a lot of these. At least it has a good security pedigree. There has been one major HomeKit breach. But Apple fixed it fairly fast after it was discovered. But see, now with a lot of these devices that you get, they come from some fly-by-night company, oftentimes out of China. These devices get hacked and owned all the time, and there are entire botnets out there of DVRs and smart cameras and smart bulbs and things like that various hacker groups have taken over. So that's one thing HomeKit helps eliminate or protect you from. So you do have to be careful when you're buying stuff. You have to make sure that the device you're buying says works with HomeKit, and that's one of the things I'll walk you through in the book. But one thing I do want to say to people up front, most people are familiar with home automation, but a lot of people are scared by it for various reasons. Security is one of those. So that's one thing you don't have to worry about as much with HomeKit. But a lot of people have this idea that, you have to just immediately have, for instance, one of the things when I was looking at Hue lights and people kept saying how great Hue lights are, I thought, oh man, this could be so expensive to get those lights for every single outlet. But here's the thing I realized after I started playing with this stuff is that you don't have to automate every little thing in your house. In fact, for people who don't want to spend a fortune on it, I recommend start off with a simple smart outlet that you just plug into a wall and plug another device into. And they're anywhere between $30 and $50 and work for a HomeKit controlled device. iHome makes a $30 one that's pretty good. Elgato makes the $50 ones, and they're great. and you can just get started with that. If you just have like a lamp or a heater or something you want to automate, that's a great way to get started. But something I think a lot of people find, if you get into Hue bulbs and things like this, is there's not really that many lights in your house that you use. At least in my case, my house has a ton of lights in it, like an unnecessary amount. But really, there's only a handful I use on a regular enough basis. I have some in my TV room. I have some in my kitchen. I mess with often. I have this one in my office that I like to dim and all that. But a lot of my other lights I don't mess with that much. If I do, it's like I flip a switch once a day or so. So it doesn't have to. You can spend a lot on home automation. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have to cost a fortune, and you don't have to go whole hog. And if you're worried about losing control of your home, don't, because look, and you know this about me, Chuck. I am very much I'm very skeptical of a lot of technology, shall we say. I raise chickens. I'm a blacksmith. I live on a farm. So I'm sort of an unusual person to be writing about home automation. I'm not exactly future man here. But I found from a practical level, it's one of those things that it can make your life easier. It can smooth friction points in your life and be genuinely useful. As an example, just to show you how useful it can be, we moved into this house a few months ago, and it took me a while to get all the home automation set up right away because I wanted to have time to think about it, and also I wanted to be able to document it for the book. And my wife finally was just like, "When are you putting the Hue lights in again? When are you setting up the home automation stuff again? Because this is driving me nuts. I miss being able to control the lights from my phone." And one of the big reasons is because we have a toddler, and my toddler likes to lay on top of her and fall asleep. And so a lot of times she gets stuck on the couch and she just wants to dim some lights and turn lights off and stuff at night. And she couldn't do that. So she had to get up and flip switches, or I had to get up and flip switches. And so over time, even though she was even more skeptical of home automation than I am, or I was, she ended up liking it a great deal. And I think a lot of people, if they give it a try, if you're already in the Apple ecosystem, you're going to like it too once you give it a shot.
Josh, I think those are some fantastic points, and folks, you ought to go back and rewind and listen to Josh again, because you're right. There is this terrible temptation to go out and you think that, the only way to do this is to just do everything. And the only thing that I might alter as far as my recommendation would be is start with the Hue lights, because that's probably the thing I use the most. Mm-hmm. And you're right. You don't have to outfit every single light bulb in your house as a Hue light. But a lamp in a couple, maybe your nightstand lamps in your bedroom, and a lamp or two in your living room, that's a great way to get started. I am curious, though, because I know what my advice would be, and I've said it before on the show. Do you find that you use the color changing part of the Hue lights a lot, or is that one of those things that sounds really cool but just doesn't get a lot of play?
I think it's more gimmick than useful. I will say that it's nice in terms of, the white lights have some adjustment in terms of warmth, but not as much as the color bulbs. So, there's a lot of possibility with the color bulbs. And I agree with you, Chuck. There are two starter paths I usually recommend for people. One of those is, just get a simple outlet. But if you don't mind spending a little money on it right away, get the Hue bulbs. Because that's how I got started, and it's a great. They're just wonderful. They're just so great for so many reasons. But I do recommend, if you do that, there's a white starter set for I think $75 or so, and then there's a white and color set. I think it usually goes for $200. I got mine for $150. I've seen it lower. I've seen it like $125. I would try to get that on sale if you can, because I think that's a much better deal. But anyway, I think the white and color set, especially if you find it on sale, is a better value, because when you do the per bulb cost, you usually save money doing that. But also, you want to find out how much you like those color bulbs. And in some rooms, I do like having color bulbs. Like TV room, it's great to have color bulbs because you can set mood lighting. One thing I learned at my old house is that blue light doesn't tend to reflect off a TV as much or as noticeably as other colors. So that's a useful thing to have. So definitely in your media room, your TV room, I recommend having the color bulbs. Other rooms, bedroom, I won't go into details why, but that can be a lot of fun to have the color bulbs in your bedroom. But most of my rooms, though I have Hue bulbs, it's white lights. For various stupid reasons, I have color bulbs in my kitchen right now. I'm probably going to move those to my TV room, swap those out. I just haven't had time to do that. Now in my office here, I do have a Hue bulb. That's the light right there. It's just a white bulb because it would be fun. And so here's the thing with the white versus color bulbs. A white bulb is about $15. I saw them in sale recently. I didn't buy them in time, but they were $10 a piece from Walmart, which isn't a terrible price for an LED bulb. In general, the color bulbs, quite a bit more expensive. They used to be $50 a piece for the Philips bulbs. I think they're down to $45 or even $40 now. Even then, they're too high. And there are some off-brand, I can't really say off, like Sylvania and some other companies make HomeKit compatible standalone bulbs that can change color. I have not experimented with those, and they tend to be about $35. But I find generally one of the reasons I like Philips Hue so much, and this is kind of outside the scope of the book, but I do mention it in the book, is that Philips Hue works with everything. They have such an enormous ecosystem. So it's not just HomeKit they work with. They also work with Google Home in case you ever get like a Google Home speaker. They work with Alexa, if you get an Amazon Echo. They work with If This Then That. Philips has their own thing. They work with all kinds of stuff. So the Hue bulbs, you're really getting a good investment. And there's also an enormous developer community. One of my favorite apps, and again, this is outside of HomeKit. HomeKit can't really do stuff like this, but there's an app for the iPhone called Light DJ. And what it can do is it can sync it listens to music through the microphone of your iPhone, and it syncs your Hue bulbs to it, like flashing lights and colors. And it's an awesome app. I mean, if you're having a party and you play some music and you set up Light DJ, you can have like an instant dance party. I've seen it happen, even with my fairly lame get-togethers. So, Philips Hue offers a lot of fun in that regard. I think that's where you find the best value for your money in terms of the light bulb stuff. But yeah, so and that's kind of the breakdown between the white and the color. Now, if the color bulbs were cheaper, if we were talking about like $10 for white and $20 for color, I would have color bulbs in every single light in this house. It would be totally worth it. But closer to $50 a bulb, you gotta be a little more selective. It's more of a special occasion kind of thing.
Yeah, agreed completely. And the one caveat I'll add too, and then we'll move on from the bulbs, is that figure out what you're going to do with them, and by all means buy some color bulbs because they're fun to play with. But I found that if I buy the dimmable whites, I mean, then I can change the temperature a little bit, and I can also dim them, and so I'm covered. Because I'm a huge believer in dimmer switches, and when I found out that you could dim some of these things, I was like, okay, this is perfect, because sometimes you want the room bright and you can see everything. Other times you want to just tone it down. But no matter what you do, I agree with you on the Hue. I think, they're a little bit expensive, but they work with everything. They're a bit of a standard at this moment, and if you start mixing too many different kinds, then you have multiple hubs and you've got all kind of problems trying to get it connected, and just complicates everything. If you settle on, for example, the Hue bulbs as those are going to be your light bulbs, you're going to be happier, trust us.
Right. But see, now one of the genius things about HomeKit is that it can help all these different things work together as one unit. So one of the things, HomeKit does a few things. Mostly it ties this stuff together. So you can use Siri commands to control your stuff. That was really the initial purpose. But now they have this Home app, which you can open that up. So instead of having to open up, like, say, the Philips Hue app and the Ecobee app and the Elgato Eve app, and open like 3 or 4 different apps, you can open one app, the Home app. And you don't even have to use Apple's Home app. There are different HomeKit control apps. Actually, that Elgato Eve app is a HomeKit app. But I'm mostly focused on Apple Home through this book. This is very much a 0 to 60 kind of book. You can start off not knowing anything about home automation, and hopefully by the end you're an expert, because I walk you through just piece by piece. So another thing HomeKit, but one of the biggest things to me that HomeKit does is they make it so you can control stuff from Control Center. So you don't have to fumble with an app. You don't have to worry about whether Siri can hear you or not. You can just open Control Center and turn lights on and off from your phone without even unlocking it, depending on your settings. So that's a lot of the big stuff about HomeKit that I really love, and that works with iOS, so either your iPhone or iPad. It also works through Apple TV. You can issue Siri commands through Apple TV. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure of HomeKit, because it's kind of a boring topic, but it's so important for understanding how HomeKit works and also what you can do with it. And it's something I cover up front in the book. So I talk about, so HomeKit has sort of a hierarchy, right? So at the lowest level, we have what they call accessories, like a Hue bulb is an accessory. That's the actual device itself. And there's actually a level lower than that called services, although the Home app doesn't really touch on that much. That's more of an advanced thing. So you have rooms, which are just like rooms. In theory, they should line up with rooms of your house. Some people abuse those, which I think is a very bad choice. Although some other home automation systems like Google Home don't have the kinds of groupings you can do with HomeKit. So some people do just make up fake rooms just so they can group their devices together. It's very sad. Anyway, so you have rooms, which are, in theory, collections of accessories. And then you have zones. A zone is a collection of rooms. And usually it's like upstairs, downstairs, that sort of thing. And then finally, at the very top, and the first thing you put together is a home. So, which is, your house, or another home could be a garage or a vacation home. So you have homes, zones, rooms, accessories. And then there's two other things that are very important, super important. And this is really where the true power of home automation comes in. But I don't really explain them in full until later in the book, because you really have to have a good grasp on this stuff before you start learning this. Because this is, with great power comes great mistakes. And this is where you can really shoot yourself in the foot. So there's what they call scenes. And a scene is like a macro. It's like a collection of different actions. So, if I tell Siri, hey, good morning, it'll turn certain lights on, it'll dim certain lights, it'll adjust my thermostat, things like that. And if I say, hey, good night, it'll shut lights off, adjust thermostat, get my house ready for, me going to sleep. And you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with scenes. Like you can do I used to make up all kinds of fun ones, like there's one I had called Batten Down the Hatches. It turned all my rooms blue. There's all kinds of crazy things you can do with scenes. But again, you can access all your scenes both from Siri and Control Center, because it's just one button to do a whole bunch of stuff in your house. And then the other concept that's also very important, and it builds upon scenes, and this is the annoying thing about Apple, they name everything common names. Like the Home app, it's the Home app, and you have a home in your Home app. And so they have what's called automations. And yes, I know we're already talking about home automation, but this is where you have actions taking place without your input, without your direct input. So at sunrise, turn on the good morning scene, or when I leave the house, lock the door, things like that. And I go into that in the book toward the end. And so I'll walk you all the way through choosing your devices and then up to setting them up, how to control them, how to create scenes with them, how to create automations with them. I even go into some more advanced stuff. I'm kind of handy around the house. And so I have sections on how to install smart light switches. I give a lot of electrical advice on working with electrical stuff safely. I talk about installing an Ecobee thermostat. That's another big part of my home automation setup. And that's another thing. Once you're comfortable with the light bulbs and all that, if you don't mind a little wiring, or if you know a good HVAC person, you get one of these smart thermostats, and you can be laying in bed in the morning, you're sleeping in, it's kind of cold, you want to turn up the thermostat, you don't have to get out of bed. You don't have to. You just open your phone up. You don't have to unlock your phone. Just go to Control Center, press down, adjust the slider, good to go. Your house is getting warmer.
I have not invested in a smart thermostat because I don't quite trust them yet. And in the part of the country where, well, you have it too, where I live, if I would be away and something would happen and the smart thermostat would not turn the furnace on, I could have frozen pipes and a whole lot of problems. Mm-hmm. So that's just me. That's just not, the right thing for me. Really, the lights have been the big thing for me. But I have played with some other things. And of course, I don't know, do you consider at this point the HomePod part of your home automation setup?
I don't have one yet for different reasons, but I do. But it does play a role. I do touch on that in the book because thankfully all my editors have HomePod, so I can ask them questions about it. But it only serves two functions as of yet. Unfortunately, it acts as a HomeKit hub. So let me back up and explain that concept a little bit. So a hub lets you, and there are three devices that can work as a hub: HomePod, fourth gen or Apple TV 4K, or an iPad. And what a hub does, it lets you control your house while you're away from home, because all three of these devices have Wi-Fi and they have Bluetooth, and so they're basically acting as your little buddy inside your house to help you control your house. And so you issue the command to HomeKit. HomeKit gives the command to the hub. The hub actually controls the devices in your house. It's a very secure setup, and you have to have two-factor authentication on to enable that feature. You also have to have a hub to enable automations. I'm guessing that's because iCloud or whatever probably sends those commands to the hub, regardless of where you're at in the world or your network connectivity. That's my understanding of it anyway. And then the second thing that the HomePod can do in terms of HomeKit is, of course, you can issue Siri commands to control your accessories and your scenes. I understand the HomePod's great at picking up whispering, so you can be like, good morning, or hey Siri, good morning, and it could activate, activate my phone.
See, that's how good it is.
Right. So, you could, do something like that and activate your scenes, which is pretty cool. And whenever I do get a HomePod, I'll be looking forward to that. But right now, the big thing, and of course you set up the HomePod with the Home app. I don't really get into that in the book because I consider that a separate topic. But now, whenever they have AirPlay 2 is supposed to integrate into HomeKit. And so I guess what you can do is you can automate things like music playback and stuff like that. Now, whenever they get that figured out, that's going to be pretty cool. That's going to be, I'm probably have to buy a HomePod for that and do a book update. But for right now, it's kind of lame. Unfortunately, it just acts as a hub, and it's another Siri thing to listen to you.
I find the whole home automation thing, I think people your point about them being scared is a good one, because at one point at some level they're scared, at another level they think it can do more or should do more than it can right at the moment. And that's not just a commentary on Apple home automation, but on home automation in general. Because if you want something to be able to do something, it probably means you're going to have to buy a new one. Now, in the case of, let's say, a coffee maker, yeah, you can have a simple coffee maker that, okay, you just hook it to a smart switch and you turn it on and turn it off, and that's going to be the extent of it. But some of the newer coffee makers, as I understand it, and because I'm not a coffee drinker, you can do a lot more with it. And some of the crock pots, that now have automation built. There's so much stuff, but you're going to have to buy new stuff to have all these capabilities. Are we a little early in that, Josh, when we should be investing too much money in some of this stuff, or do you think it's time now that we could actually do it and feel pretty good about it?
I think this is the best time there's ever been. Now, to be clear, home automation is nothing new. I heard from a reader who was telling me that he was controlling his X10 setup with an Apple II in like 1980. So I mean, just how crazy is that? And my pal Rich Mogul, who is a security editor at Tidbits, he's been building on his system for over a decade. And it's just nuts. He's got over 80 different devices. He's got special software that bridges HomeKit and all this other stuff. It's just, I mean, he's like a wizard, literally. So now, though, we're getting to the point where you're seeing stuff that isn't just one-off, and it isn't just stuff for enthusiasts. You're at the point, 10, 20 years ago, you got a home automation set up. You had to pay a guy, right? You had to pay a guy. Now, I could drive to Walmart and plop down $30, or more, and have some home automation gear. They sell the Hue bulbs, they sell the Wemo switches, they sell the iHome stuff. They even sell Nest and stuff now. I mean, it's so commonplace, and it's relatively affordable. So if you've ever been curious about it, now is the time. And I think especially with the HomePod, the HomePod routes you through the Home app. And so a lot of people are curious about home automation right now. And so I think this book's hitting at the perfect time because, this is really the time to do it. And we're also at the point, it's not so early that things are just experimental, but there's a lot of places it can all still go. But there's some very well-entrenched players. Like, for instance, Hue bulbs are not going anywhere. They have tremendous third-party support. Let's see, is it Cassetta, the Lutreon switches? Those things also have like a ton of third-party support. They have a huge ecosystem around them. The Wemo switches, they support HomeKit now. You have to buy a $40 hub, but again, that's one of those things that every developer on the planet, wants to have something for the Wemo. So you have some extremely well-supported devices. And I do have to give a shout out to the sponsor of the book, Elgato, which they make their Eve line of stuff. And they've been tremendously supportive of me and of the whole home automation thing in general. And they make a lot of great devices that are very user-friendly. Stuff like the Eve Room, which can monitor your temperature, humidity, and air quality level, and it just runs off batteries. It's nothing intimidating about it. It's a slightly more expensive version of a thermometer you might have in your room anyway, but you can do a lot more with it because then you can use it to trigger automations. You can check your temperature and your air quality and whatever from anywhere in the world, really. So. And I strongly believe this, and me, Chuck, I don't just say nice things about Apple just to say nice things about Apple. HomeKit is the most polished, user-friendly, complete home automation system I've seen. It's not intimidating. It's very simple. It's very friendly. I mean, there's still some complications. There's still things to know. But it's not nearly as rough. For instance, I've been experimenting with Alexa and Google Home, which, they have sort of their own alternatives to HomeKit. And they're just so primitive by comparison. For as popular as Alexa is and so advanced as Google is, their home automation stuff just, like, for instance, something HomeKit can do that no one else can do yet is you can group accessories and treat them as one accessory. So, for instance, if you have, let's say, a light fixture and it has 2 Hue bulbs in it, you can group those 2 Hue bulbs together and call it your kitchen light, which is what I've done in my house. And I just have one slider that controls the brightness or the color of those 2 lights, and they just act as one light. Meanwhile, Google Home isn't nearly as smart about that stuff. If I tell it to turn off the kitchen lights, it'll turn off too. But if I just wanted to, just dim, if I wanted to, let's see. So in my TV room, I have all different Hue bulbs in there. So I can't just tell it, hey, turn on my overhead light. It doesn't understand that. I have to say, okay, turn off light bulb 1, turn off light bulb 2, turn on this one. It doesn't understand that sort of thing. While HomeKit does. So that's one of the huge advantages of HomeKit. Another thing HomeKit can do, this is especially handy with smart outlets. You can assign different device types to an outlet. For instance, this bulb, it's a Hue bulb now, but I did have an Eve smart switch controlling it. I decided the bulb would be a better solution. But something you can do in the Home app, I discussed this in the book. You can say, what kind of device is this outlet? Is it a light? Is it a heater? And so you could say something like, even though, so then Siri knows that's the light. So then I could say to Siri, hey, turn off my office light. And it understands because it knows that outlet is a light. But let's say you have a heater hooked up to it. You say, hey, turn the heat on in my office. And it can understand that. Or you can hook a fan up to that outlet. And you can tell the Home app, if you know how to configure it. And so then Siri understands that it's turning your fan on. So there's all this stuff Apple has thought out. Now, there is a very good point about the ecosystem, but and what devices will work with HomeKit. But I see more stuff all the time, especially, you're at CES. There's a ton of HomeKit stuff announced at CES. And it seems like every month I'm getting stuff in my inbox about new HomeKit accessories. It's a booming market right now. So you have entrenched players, and you also have a lot of innovations coming out. It's a very exciting time.
You started out by saying that HomeKit, there's a lot of security involved with HomeKit, and I think that's just such an important thing because there's so many. Everybody's out there slapping some of the controls for some of the other smart devices on their device, and with no concern for security or anything. And so you're ending up putting, as Brian Chaffin would say, you're ending up putting potential wiretaps in your home or spy cameras in your home. And, that's not to say that somebody's watching you every minute of every day. But, it's one of those things that you think about. With Apple, okay, you're right. There was one major breach. They fixed it. So far, it seems to be the best standard for security. And yes, HomeKit devices do cost more, but I think it's worth it because in the long run, that's something that's going to be important, especially if you invest in smart locks and devices that potentially, if they went wrong, could damage or allow damage to happen to your home. And that's one reason yes, I have the Amazon devices. I've used the Amazon devices, but I have to say, my perception is that Siri has gotten so much better with controlling my devices. There was a time that, all right, I'd have to ask one or the other to turn on the lights, and one would work half the time, and the other one would work the other half the time. Not so much anymore. The Siri seems to be super reliable, and I do have a HomePod, so I have that ability. But I also have a phone. I also have an Apple Watch, and she responds. He, she, it, whatever, responds, to those devices too. So it just seems to be a much better way to go. And I agree with you about the polished interface and the way that you add things to it. It feels a lot more intuitive than some of the other options out there.
I have to say, for as dumb as Siri can be, when it comes to the home automation stuff, and Siri always feels like to me like there's different teams in charge of different areas for expertise, some better than others. I generally think the HomeKit team in that regard is excellent because she understands the commands I give. Like, for instance, I'll try some right now, fly by wire here. Hey, Siri, turn my office light to 50%.
Okay, I set the floor lamp to 50%.
Hey, Siri, turn my office light full blast.
I'm not sure what you mean by that in HomeKit. Can you try that another way?
Okay, Siri, turn my office light to full brightness. Turn my office light to full brightness.
Okay, I set the floor lamp to 100%.
Hey, Siri, turn my kitchen blue.
8 of your devices are not responding.
Of course, it has to blow up on your show.
Oh, sure.
So I think what's happened there is so my wife came home extra early tonight, and I think she turned off the lights with the wall switch. This is something I mentioned in the book, and this is a real problem with Hue bulbs, because Hue bulbs have to always have a power source, right? The problem is if you turn the light switch off at the wall, they're not getting power like they need to. So that's something you have to be careful of. And I mentioned a few ways to solve this in the book. One of those is you can get a smart switch and replace your light switches with that. Although I don't know of any. I have a lot of 3-way switches in my house, and I don't know of any that work with those. Unfortunately, that's where I could really use them. Right now, some people will. I don't discuss this in the book. I don't recommend it. Some people rig up their light switches so their lights never turn off anymore, and it's all through Hue. I think that's probably a poor choice in the long run. But I can see why you'd have that temptation. So that's something to be aware of. So, the device is not responding, that can make you like, oh, geez, what's happening? Well, a lot of times it's just, oh, the light switch is off.
Yeah, I've just had such good luck, I guess, with Siri, and especially again, it seems to be getting better. When the stuff first came out, it was a little shaky, but there are a few basic rules you have to obey. I want to go back to the book and how it's structured, Josh. Is this something where you walk someone through setting up a system, or is it more of a free-form discussion of, okay, this is what you may want to do, and here's some devices I recommend? How did you approach the whole topic?
So usually when I write a take control book, I have a terrible attention span, so I try to respect that in my readers. But this is a case where I know people will ignore this anyway and do what they want. But if you're listening to this, and I say this several times up front in the book, it's really the kind of book you want to read. You want to start page 1 and read all the way through. There may be, if you're familiar with this stuff already, there's probably some stuff you'll want to skim over. But you might learn stuff. So my editor for this is Dan Frakes, who used to be with Macworld very famously, and now he's with the New York Times working for the Wirecutter. And Dan kept leaving comments like, "I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do this." Like, and he's over there. He's one of their home automation experts. He's actually, I think, more devices than I do, and I'm teaching him stuff. So it's one of those things, and that's not to brag on myself. That's to tell you, the reader, there may be some stuff you think you know that you actually don't know, because there's lots of little details in this. So I strongly recommend start at page 1, and the book's only, including acknowledgments and everything, it's 156 pages long. So it's not a very long read. Now, a lot of that, I think about 30 pages into the book, is specific installation instructions for certain devices. So, really looking at probably about more like closer to 100 pages of actual content. So, not a super beefy volume, but it is very dense in information. So if you're looking to get into home automation, yes, please start at the beginning and read all the way through. And that's sort of the expectation of the book.
Any devices we've missed? I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about lights and switches, which I think that's natural, because those are the first things people get involved with, and they're probably the ones that are the most mature at this point. But is there any other devices that you found that you just absolutely love, and if somebody gets beyond the basics, you say, oh, this is the one you really have to buy?
I think a thermostat's definitely a good one. And I have the Ecobee 4, which you don't have to get that fancy. Honeywell makes some HomeKit compatible thermostats now for about $100. So they're not much more expensive than a standard thermostat. Of course, they're kind of weird to install, and I tend to be very paranoid about HVAC systems. I'm sure you are too up there where you're at.
Yep.
So even more so than I am. So the lights, thermostats, smart outlets. Also, don't neglect sensors. Things like the Eve degree, which you can sit outside. It can tell you what the actual temperature is just outside your house. Things like the Eve room that can use inside your house. Sensors like that are great, because I can do things like, we're gonna try this again. Hey Siri, what's my bedroom temperature?
The bedroom temperature near the hideaway home is at 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
So you can do things like that. But also what those sensors enable you to do, also things like Elgato. This is actually one of my favorites. This is actually probably my favorite sensor. The Eve Motion. It's a motion detector that works with HomeKit. And you can set it so it notifies you if no one's home, and it senses that by your iPhone location. If no one's home, it tells you if it senses movement. So that's a great one to have. But you can also do things like have it set up so, hey, when you sense motion, turn the lights on. So, I keep meaning to set this up in my office. So when I walk into my office, it turns my Hue bulb on because I don't like the overhead light. I don't want to sit here that blaring in my face, but also it's a pain. I walk in here, stumble through the dark, turn that on, or I have to turn a light on, come over here, turn this on, go back, turn that off. That's something home automation can solve very easily for me. So yeah, do not neglect sensors. And actually the one I just called upon there is actually part of the Ecobee, because they include a room sensor with the Ecobee 4. So you have the main thermostat senses occupancy and it senses temperature, but also they give you a little battery-powered sensor. And you can buy more of these. You can spread them throughout your house, and they can keep track of the temperature in your various rooms. So if you do your own thermostat install like I did, and you're very paranoid about the temperature of your house, you can keep asking Siri what all the temperatures of your rooms are.
I was hoping to get through this show without having you cost me money, but I think you just cost me money, Josh, because I did not know that about the Ecobee. So maybe I'll have a reconsideration here.
The Ecobee 4 also includes Alexa, which is either a pro or a con, depending on your worldview. I'm not quite convinced either way. But it's so strange too, because so you tell Alexa, "Hey Alexa, turn my thermostat up." I cannot do that. You must install the Ecobee skill. I'm like, you are an Ecobee.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that, but yeah, knowing the Alexa system, that makes perfect sense. But you would think that they would have figured a way around that, but I guess not.
Right.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
Yeah. I laughed at earlier about you being, a bit of a trader, but you decided to put some of the Google devices in your home, and that just kind of blew me away, especially with some of the focus on security that we've had talked about here and in the past.
So it's kind of interesting. Really, it comes back. So a friend of mine who does another podcast keeps going on and on about how much better Google services are than Apple services. And he made the point that, he said, Google actually is more invested in your privacy than Apple is. I'm like, well, how do you figure that? He's like, well, if Google had a privacy breach, they would be out of business because no one would want to do anything with them, although it hasn't hurt Equifax all right. But Apple, you still buy their doodads. You may just not use their services. I'm like, well, you have a point. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, I can't think of. There's only one breach of Google services I can think of, and that's some guy hacking into Sarah Palin's email account, which could happen on any service, and that was well before two-factor authentication and stuff. So I'm like, maybe Google isn't as bad on the privacy front as we thought. Also, Apple handed over basically all their data to the Chinese. Supposedly it's encrypted. And then also on top of that, we find out that Apple's been using Google to hold their iCloud stuff. Again, that's supposedly encrypted, but locks get broken. So I'm kind of like, well, why am I even worrying about this stuff as much? And also, just as a tech writer, I feel like I wasn't experimenting with enough stuff. I got kind of paranoid, or I was very selective about the stuff I used. But I'm like, this is what people are really using, and so I need to have a better sense of it. And so, on a whim, when I was at Walmart, they were on sale. I got a Google Home Mini, Google Home Express, what we call the little ones, the little hockey puck ones. And I ended up really liking it. And I found, for the most part, it understood what I wanted it to say. Like, it could play content from not only the Google Music service, but also YouTube and some other places. I could Chromecast various things to it. And I found that worked better, especially for audio-only stuff than AirPlay would have for some things. I just generally liked it a lot. I ended up getting one of the main Google Homes, one of the $100 ones, and then getting another Google Home Mini. And so there's something else the Google Home can do that HomePod can't. Anyway, is it can do whole house audio. You can set up groups of different Google Homes as a single Chromecast device. And so I could play, there's various radio shows and podcasts and stuff I like to listen to. Well, and when I walk through my home, I work from home, I don't always like having AirPods in my ears. Well, now I can play that show through my whole house. And so if I go to eat lunch, I don't have to pause anything. I don't have to transition anything. I just walk in there and it's still playing. I don't miss a beat. So I like the Google Home speakers quite a bit. Of course, what stinks about the whole deal is that everyone's got kind of their walled garden, although Google's isn't quite as bad as Apple's because it can work with Spotify, it can work with a lot of other services. Also, apparently you can buy stuff from Walmart with Google Home. I haven't tried that yet, but so I just found it had a lot of interesting capabilities, and also for the money, it seemed like it had much better sound quality than the Amazon Echoes do. And frankly, at this stage of the game, if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago, in fact, I think you probably did, Chuck. You can probably go back and look up an episode. Google used to really freak me out. But honestly, in this foul year of our Lord 2018, Jeff Bezos scares me a lot more than Larry Page does. Just talking realistically. So what's Google doing? I could tell what they're making phones and they want you to use a browser as a laptop. What's Amazon doing? Oh, well, we're trying to eliminate, all the jobs in the world. Also, I bought a newspaper, and so I'm trying, so I'm controlling the editorial section. Oh, and also I'm sending rockets to the moon. And, and you have to look this up on YouTube if you don't believe me. Oh, I'm sitting here in a giant robot suit like I'm Ed 209. Also, I dress up like I've joined a militia. So for all sorts of reasons, Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Oh, also, he's also now the richest man in the world with the biggest company just about in the world. Oh, yeah. And also he has distribution centers everywhere. Oh, and they also bought Whole Foods. So, yeah, you look at the past 5 years. Yeah, Amazon's freaking me out a lot more than Google is at this point. Google kind of looks benign by comparison.
Okay, this is not covered in the book, but you make some interesting points. I've got to process those a little bit. This is not a beat up Google or beat up Amazon show by any means.
Sure.
I guess the only thing I would say in response to your Google point, and it's a very good point, but there's also very clear evidence that Google is using that information. That information, you are the product. Google makes you the product. Sure. Apple does not. At least, again, we have no evidence of that. And so, if you're comfortable being made a product, then yes, Google probably does want to keep your information as private to itself as it can, because that makes them the exclusive dealer of that information.
Right. So they're more invested in your privacy. But also, I've noticed Google has become a lot more interested lately in charging you for services. They try to get you like free level. Google Photos is a good example. I love Google Photos. I can do a whole other show on that. But you have a free level. You can upload all the movies and pictures that you want for free. We're so off track now. But it's lower quality. It's still good quality. It's like 16 megapixels and 1080p. But if you want like unlimited megapixels and 4K or whatever, you have to pay a little money for that. So they have changed their model a little bit. I sort of feel like I understand Google's business slightly better now. Now they're actually trying to charge me for stuff. They want to sell me a Chromecast and a Google Home. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know. And, it's really just your comfort level. And that brings me back to the HomeKit stuff, right? And the home automation stuff. You have to ask yourself, at one point, how do I balance solving problems around my house with legitimate privacy fears? If you're a Dale Gribble level of paranoid or an Alex Jones level of paranoid, then you don't want any of this stuff. I'll just tell you right now, it doesn't matter whose stamp of approval. And there's some things in my house I'm not terribly comfortable with. Like the ecobee thermostat freaks me out just a little bit because it's got motion sensors and a microphone and Amazon's linked into it. I'm probably going to turn some of that stuff off. But now, the Hue bulbs, if some Russian hacker finds out my lights are on, who cares? But I've never had that worry anyway. So it's really your comfort level. Off the HomeKit thing, something I just recently reviewed for Tidbits are these Wise Cam security cameras. And, these little cheap $20 cameras, they're not HomeKit compatible, unfortunately. So I don't cover. Well, actually, I mentioned them in the book. I gave them an honorable mention as a nice option for if you need that sort of thing. But a lot of people ask me, like, aren't you worried someone's going to hack into these and listen in on you? I'm like, I'm more worried about some junkie walking down the road and stealing my dog again. So, that's the balance I'm dealing with there. Yeah, I want to keep an eye on the roving junkies that travel the countryside in the warm months. If some Russian kid or, Vladimir Putin or I don't know who leads China now is listening to me talk to you, Chuck, that's less of a worry, and it's all about balancing that stuff out. I mean, sure, I could get rid of all this stuff in my house. And that's something I advocate. Look, and I give 10 commandments of home automation in this book. And one of them is don't get too reliant on your home automations. There's, other than the thermostat's hardwired in and the switch is hardwired in. But you know what? I did those myself. I have right here. Here's the thermostat. If Ecobee freaks me out too much, I get a little too nosy, this sucker will go back in tonight if I have to do that. The Hue bulbs, I can pull them. I can unplug the hub, and they're just dumb light bulbs. You always need to be in control of your home automation, and when done right, and when you follow the instructions in my book, you will feel in control of it. And home automation will help you feel more powerful and more in control of your house, and not less. And that's really what I teach in the book. And it's less technical stuff and more about how to think about this stuff in a way that you stay on top of it.
I think that's where we're going to leave it, because that is some really excellent advice for starting your home automation, or if you already have some, the things you should be thinking about. Okay, so this is a brand new title, so there are no upgrades, obviously, because there was nothing before it. How much is this book?
$14.99, $15, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And of course, at TakeControlBooks.com, that's where you can find it, along with other books by Josh on Apple TV. And I don't even know what else, Josh. You guys have written so many, I lose track of who's written what.
I've done Apple TV. I did half of a preview book with Adam Inkst. I do the iOS books every year, and now I've done the home automation book. And I'll also mention, since Elgato sponsored this, they haven't told me what they're doing with this yet. They apparently have some sort of plan. They're going to distribute the book themselves. So maybe in the future, if you buy one of their Eve home automation products, you may get the book for free. I haven't talked to them yet about that. I need to. Adam, if you're listening, give me a call. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, if you want the book now, guaranteed, $15, TakeControlBooks.com. As far as I know, it's the only book on HomeKit out there so far.
And that's it. And one last endorsement. HomeKit, I really do believe, is the way you want to go if you're an Apple user, because of the integration with the Apple ecosystem and because of the privacy issues, in spite of what we discussed with Google. Still not convinced, but I'm working on it. Hey, Josh, thanks so much for the time. It's been a lot of fun. We will do it again about a next book, or maybe we'll just get you back to talk about some of those ancillary topics we've covered in the past couple interviews.
We've got at least 20 or 30 going on now.
Yeah, really. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. We will be back with more. Until then, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices, and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.